Welcome to our today's question and answer series on the biology topics. In fact, we are going to be revealing some questions and providing you with some top answers which you can use to tackle any exams of your choice, being it at the high school level, the university level, and whatever level that you are. We're going to provide some top quiz, that is questions, and providing optimal answers, how you can tackle these questions to get the answers correctly. In fact, we are having a total of 10 of these questions to ask to you and giving you the questions and the answers. But before we proceed, I would like you to understand that as we give these questions, try by every means to select one of the list of answers which you think is correct. And after that, we are going to make sure that we correct you, providing you with the correct answers and reasons why those particular answers are correct for that specific questions. In fact, if you want to keep track of your biology knowledge, to stay in track and always make sure that you are optimal at that level, then you want to make sure that you go ahead to subscribe to this channel and also enable the notification bell icon so that anytime we put videos like this answering this type of questions under different topics in biology, then of course you want to make sure to go ahead to subscribe to this channel and also enable the notification bell icon to not miss any new updates which we have to share with you. So without wasting time, I'm going to begin with the first question on this list, which is going to be question 71. This is the 8th episode of this series. So question 71, we are beginning with the first question: which organ is responsible for the storing of bile? Which organ in the body stores bile? We have option A, which is the liver. We have option B, the pancreas. We have option C, the gallbladder. And we have option D, the duodenum. Which among this list you think is correct? Which primary function is for the storage of bile? Whichever answer you have selected among this list, the correct answer is option C, which is the gallbladder. In fact, you need to understand that the gallbladder is simple, the structure that is responsible for storing bile, which is being produced at the level of the pancreas or the liver. So you can still be asked which organ is responsible for the production or formation of bile. You're going to choose option A, which is going to be liver. But this time they're asking you not about the liver or about which organ is responsible for bile production. This time they're asking you what organ is responsible for the storing of the bile. In other words, why the liver primary function is for the production of bile, it is being stored at the level of the gallbladder. This is the most simplest and better way to understand this particular point by noting the fact that why the liver primary function is production of the bile, the gallbladder on the other hand is responsible for storing of the bile which have been produced by the liver. Let's move to the next question. The next question will be question 72, and it reads, which condition results from lack of insulin? We have A, hypertension. We have B, diabetes mellitus. We have C, goiter. And we have D, anemia. Which condition results to lack of insulin? Which among this list? Whichever option you have selected, the correct option here is B, diabetes mellitus. I will try to explain to you why this one is very correct. In fact, I want to read this to you first to understand what we are going to explain. First, you need to understand that insulin deficiency actually prevents glucose uptake. And as a result of this, it causes high blood pressure, resulting to high sugar level. In fact, when we talk about diabetes mellitus, it is the condition where, of course, we are not able to take glucose, which, of course, as a result of this, the islet of Langerhans cannot function properly because we have at the level of the pancreas where we have the islet of the Langerhans. We have the beta and the alpha cells that plays the role of reconverting sugar in terms of glucagon, which is stored at the level of the liver. But once we have this condition where we have lack of insulin, there is a condition where we are not able to reconvert this glucose into glycogen, which can be stored in the form of energy at the level of the liver. In fact, it is the exact cause of what we term as diabetes mellitus, which of course there is insufficient insulin. And as a result of insulin deficiency, what happens is glucose cannot be uptake. And as a result, it leads to high level of blood sugars in the bloodstream, which of course is this case, which is diabetes mellitus. So the option is B, diabetes mellitus. Question 73. Which structure produces cerebrospinal fluid? Cerebro, then spinal fluid. Which organ produces this fluid? We have A, which structure? We have A, meninges. We have B, choroid plexus. We have C, cerebellum. And D, the pituitary gland. Which is correct in this list? Whichever option that you select, the correct option here is B, which is choroid plexus. In fact, the choroid plexus is responsible for the secretion of cerebrospinal fluid that cushion or tend to protect the brain. So when we talk about the cerebrospinal fluid, is the fluid that is being produced function primarily to protect the brain from cushion or from shock. In fact, this particular fluid is very essential for the protection of the brain from cushion, shock, or pressure. And of course, the structure that produces this fluid is called the choroid plexus, which is responsible for the production of this cerebrospinal fluid. Let's look at the next question. The next question, question 74, we are looking at which muscle type is involuntary and striated. Which muscle type is involuntary and striated? In fact, we have options here like option A, skeletal muscle, option B, the smooth muscle, option C, cardiac muscle, option D, voluntary muscle. Whenever we talk about involuntary, when we talk about which muscle is involuntary and striated, we are talking about muscles of the heart. Therefore, it is about cardiac. It is therefore cardiac muscle, which is the correct option, because striated and involuntary is about the cardiac muscle. So cardiac muscle is striated, and of course, like the skeletal muscle, but it functions involuntarily. So the two options here that correlate to the fact that it should be cardiac muscle is because the muscles of the heart, which is cardiac, is both involuntary and also striated. That is why it is the option which is correct. So there are two features of this muscle, which is the cardiac muscle. It is involuntary, and at the same time, it is striated. That is why this option is correct. Let's move to the next question. Question 75. We are looking at which process maintains stable internal condition. Which process maintains stable internal condition? We have A, metabolism. We have B, homeostasis. We have C, adaptation. And we have D, excretion. In fact, whenever we talk about the maintenance of a stable internal condition, we are just talking about homeostasis. It is just the definition itself. And I want to read this to you to understand homeostasis. When we talk about homeostasis, it is the regulation of the body condition, such as temperature and the pH, to ensure survival. This is about homeostasis, maintaining of the internal temperature or the internal environment, which comprises of the pH level of the body and as well as temperature of the body for survival. This is homeostasis. It is just the definition. So the correct option here is option B, which is homeostasis. Let's move to the next question. The next question, which is question 76, we are looking at the level of which ecological organization includes both living and non-living component. We are talking about, this is ecology now. So ecological organization, which include both living and non-living components. A, we are looking at population. B, we are looking at community. C, we are looking at ecosystem. And D, we are looking at the biosphere. In fact, whenever you hear about the living, that is together of living and non-living, we are talking about ecosystem, because an ecosystem includes organisms which are biotic factor and physical element, such as soil, water, and climate. These soil, water, climate are non-living. So living and non-living in the same environment, which the living itself are organisms which are biotic factors, and of course the non-living including other factors like soil, water, And climate condition, we are talking about ecology, because they both interact together in the same environment. So it is ecosystem, which is correct. Let's look at the next question. Question 77. Which process returns carbon dioxide to the atmosphere? Which process returns carbon dioxide to the atmosphere? We have A, photosynthesis. We have B, respiration. We have C, nitrogen fixation. And we have D, transpiration. In fact, when we talk about the returning of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, we are simply referring to respiration, which of course is the taking oxygen into the lungs and sending out of carbon dioxide from the lungs. In fact, this process produces carbon dioxide, which is released from inside out and oxygen from out in. So this is just respiration. And during this process, where the carbon dioxide is being sent out as a byproduct, there is also glucose being broken down to produce energy. In fact, when we look at the process of respiration, it also requires energy breakdown, which of course it is glucose, which is used as the source of energy for the breaking down to release the energy. Let's look at the next question. Question 78. Which pyramid of ecology is always upright? Which pyramid of ecology is always upright? We are looking at A, pyramid of numbers, B, pyramid of biomass, C, pyramid of energy, and D, pyramid of organism. In fact, energy decreases at each trophic level due to heat loss. So we are looking at pyramid of energy. This is pyramid of energy in terms of upright. It's always been upright. It is about pyramid of energy. Why? Because energy will always decrease from the trophic level due to heat loss, and making the energy pyramid to always be upright. That is just the definition of it. That is why C, pyramid of energy, will be the correct option. Let's move to the next question. Question 79. We are looking at which symbiotic relationship benefits both organisms. We are looking at A, parasitism. We are looking at B, commensalism. We are looking at C, mutualism, and D, predation. In fact, when we talk about benefiting of both, we are talking about mutualism. It is mutual relationship. In fact, when we talk about mutual relationship, it means that both of the organism benefit, such as being like in pollination flower, where both of the two benefit. So it is just mutualism, which is C option being correct. Let's look at the 80th question on this list. The 80th question will be, which gas is fixed by nitrogen fixing bacteria? A, we are looking at oxygen. B, carbon dioxide. C, nitrogen. And D, hydrogen. In fact, when we looked at, or you get the word nitrogen fixation, then the gas involved here is nitrogen, because the nitrogen fixing bacteria is just responsible for the conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia usable by plant. That is why the nitrogen fixation bacteria use is to convert the nitrogen, which of course is the atmospheric nitrogen. It will help to convert it to ammonia, which of course this ammonia is being used by plants for its survival. So the correct option is nitrogen, which is used by the nitrogen fixing bacteria to convert it to ammonia for the plant to use. In fact, if you want to see updates of upcoming series like this, which we are preparing it, then you want to make sure to go ahead, subscribe, and enable the notification bell icon to be the very first to get updates whenever we release to you all. See you again in the next upload, and bye-bye for now.